Hello, welcome. I'm going to be playing here a game of Sticks and Stones, microgame number 11 from, what was that? Was that Metagaming, I think? Yes. This is as requested, kindly requested by USA Patriot 4163. And there's the cover. The game is about prehistoric people and their scraps with I think there's various scenarios in it. I'm just going to give you a quick look at the counters and the components at the moment before I get stuck into reading the rules and so forth. First, the map. This I think is quite a good representation of the map that you get in the game. This is actually a printout from a scan of that map on Board Game Geek. So I'm not sure what the original tonal colour is. Mine's kind of like an off pink as it came out of my printer. But you can see, I think it was basically black and white. Maybe it was on coloured paper in the original. I somehow lost that. I made up my own at some point, which is far superior, but I obviously did it from memory or from reading bits in the rules, like I had to do for the Ice War game and also actually had to do for Chitin. I don't know how I lost all those maps. I think maybe my brother stole them at some point for role-playing or something. Anyway, that's not the map. That is the map. You can get colorized versions on Board Game Geek from fans of the game. Down here we have the counters. You get two basic sides, as it were, so two colours, so it's a two-player game. The whites and the dark greens, and then over on this side you have these kind of lighter green counters. I'll show you those first, and close up they are, let's go in even closer, they are fires and woolly mammoths, or do we call them mastodons? Not sure. There's a woolly mammoth. Look, they've got some fearsome stats on them. 18, 15, 15. Is that 18? I can't read it from here. You see tiny writing on the counters. Let me get... Like, this is a sort of standard counter. That was from the Mind War game. That's decent sized writing. Tiny writing on these counters. There's a thing with the Chitin game as well, I found... which I never actually got to play because I found I didn't have all the counters. But the thing with that one is that, I'll show you at some point, it had these tiny little chits, about that size, this little corner of one of those. Yeah, I have to use this to read these. It doesn't work with the camera, but that's... I can't see it in this light. It's 18.6 and 6 or 18.6.5. So anyway, it's got one fearsome stat. Then up here we have these, basically the kind of representations of villages. So you obviously can put them on the map at, depending on the scenario. Then we'll go have a look here at some of the characters. You've got goods, some pots there. You've got a big beefy fellow. We've got some goats, fellow with an axe, fellow with a bow and some furs, one there with a spear or something. You've got a dog. You've got a fellow, is that an axe or a sling or a hammer? And you have, they call them D for dependents, a woman and a child. So you see you have various repeats of all those counters, goods, dogs, etc. And then I think it's the same with these fellows. Dogs. Yeah. Yes, I think I'll check the rules, but basically you have oh look, he looks like he's got a crossbow almost. Oh, that's going to be a bow. But it sort of goes from fellows with just fists to axes, spears, and then bows like that, kind of like a progression of weapons. But anyway, I just had a quick scan of the rules a couple of days ago. So let's now move to the... So there's nice pictures on those counters there, and you couldn't make the pictures much bigger with those counters, but you could definitely make the numbers bigger. And look, I just noticed some of them, like on the goat, the numbers are quite big, but then on that fellow next to him, they're a lot smaller, even though there's space. So I don't know why they didn't make the numbers as big as on the goat and on the dog. Looks like they had a different idea with the animals as with the folks. But anyway, that's those pieces. Now let's have a look at the back. Get back to basics. That's the back of the rule books. A game about warfare in the late Stone Age. So you've got a solitaire scenario. Optional use of fire and poisoned weapons. It's supposed to be short and simple, but challenging and interesting. Let's see if it is. Okay, there's the cover. Let's zoom out for that, sorry. And I'll open it up. So there's more where this came from. So you've got adverts for Ogre, Chitin, Melee, War, Rivets, Wizard, Olympica, and Death Test. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 games. This is number 11. So there's some after that. Designed by David Ray, edited by Keith Gross, illustrations by Pat Hiddy, and the copy editor is Donna Baker. Play tested by a bunch of folks, and it's from 1978. Okay. So, limited numbers of warriors engage in village raids, etc. Units represent small groups of warriors. Okay, so there's not individual figures, but small groups of warriors. They move and fight on a map of a typical river valley. Weapons and defences are purchased by allocation of work points. So you purchase your units. Victory is determined on the basis of booty captured, enemies killed, or large animals trapped. Each hex represents about 50 meters, and each turn about 1 minute. So it's basically the ASL of prehistory. That's what you see. It was simpler then, so you only need a few rules. So there we go. Attack strength, defense strength, movement allowance. We all know what that's about. You have the villages, animals. So the animals, you have dog packs, goats, and mastodons. The goats represent other domesticated animals. The goods represent potable, usable items such as food and or skins. And the villages can be unprotected, protected, or fortified. So you saw those 3 counters there. So you can see you've got escalating scales of weapons and defences that I guess you can purchase with those work points. So we have preparation for play. The turn sequence, you get movement phase, combat phase, second player, movement phase, combat phase. Lovely, simple. movement of goods, exiting the board, terrain effects or movement, stacking. You can have 3 warriors or warrior units per hex. Combat. If you're in the same hex, you may attack. So it's same hex combat that may be done. That's interesting. Stacking effects, dependence, attacks on dependence, attacks by dependence. When the woman bungs her child at the... no, forget I said that. Goats may be attacked only if all warriors and dogs and all dependents of that side in the hex have been attacked. Goods may only be attacked if similarly. So maybe you attack to capture in those cases. Ranged combats. Spears can attack. Adjacent bow units can attack up to 3 hexes away. Ammunition limits. So you've got 3 spears or 6 arrows by the looks of it, as it were. Capture. So warriors can capture dependents, goats or goods. Dependents may capture goats or goods. Other units may not be captured, so no, you cannot sling a mastodon on your back and carry it home. Okay, now some notes on villages, and then the optional rules. So that was half of the rule book, is the rules, which was 12 pages, counting that advert on the beginning page and the cover. So really that's only, and then the index, so that's 5 to 12, so that's, what's that, 7 pages of rules. Then optional rules, which look like they covered movement, attacks and capture. Optional rules then, extended weapons range, running, poison, wind, fire, starting a fire, there's a fire table. And then we get to the scenarios. We have a small village raid. The victory conditions are for taking dependents, goats or goods. You get minuses if you lose warriors, but it doesn't matter if you lose any dogs. Then you have a territorial ritual battle and non-lethal morale building attacks. A warrior unit may make a morale attack against all enemy units in its own hex and in adjacent hexes. All combat results are ignored, but the AK result is kept track of until the end of the combat phase. So at the end of the combat phase, turns and roll that. So then you, so you keep track of the AKs or morale points. Then you roll the die. And you see, so each side has a morale point total. Okay. So this is a ritualized battle. It says it's a bit like the North American Indians counting coups. So the prestige and territory of the tribe was maintained by a system of postures or brave acts. The battles usually ended in a single killing. Okay, so that's that one. So you're looking for morale superiority. Then you have the solitaire scenario, the mastodon hunt. So the forces, they each listed as forces having hunters of 10 points and 10 work points. Not quite sure what that means. So no restrictions on P points, maybe that's person points, and work point conversions or unit types. So you're plus 30 victory points for each mastodon killed, and -2 for each hunter killed. And there's 1, 2, 3 mastodon counters in the game, so potentially hand 3 of them. So there's quite a few extra rules for that, of things like grazing, fleeing, charging, etc. Then the next scenario, the fourth one, is migration or the horde. Following the last ice age, Since small bands would sometimes gather together for the purpose of large game hunts, possibly they would have attempted to use this method to raid the food and women-filled villages. This would have created that primitive mass the villagers feared, the horde. Oops. Boink. I knocked my table there, sorry about that. And then the last scenario, the fifth one, is called Genesis of Warfare. As villages became larger, their increased populations needed more land to sustain themselves. So now we're here up to 18 points, P points and 36 work points, 1 fortified village, etc. Okay, so you have a village and then the other side raids it. Then we have the combat results table and its explanations. Terrain effects chart. You can see on my, maybe you can't see it, on my thing I'd put a new terrain type, the barrow. I think all prehistoric sites games should include some kind of barrow. Anyway, terrain effects and then the units. So you have here their code. Bow armoured is BA, HO was hand unarmoured, armoured hand, etc. Attack strength, defence strength, movement allowance. That's nice, you don't have to check all the counters to see that. That's the P points they cost and the W points they cost. Okay, and that's the number of the counters. Okay. So a village doesn't cost so much in work points, but lots of people. Oh yes, lots of work points. Okay, so that's the game. There's the back side. That's the components. That's a quick skim through the rules, and maybe tomorrow night I'll have a chance to have read the rules, and I will play a game and give a little bit of commentary upon that. Okay, farewell for now. And take care. I'd just give a quick philosophical side note towards this game, because it's not billed as any particular thing. You might consider it like a historical war game in a sense. You know, you could think that it prefigures historical warfare, and it's based on surmises of what life was like then, or best guesses. But to me it's a fantasy game because, like I kind of maybe intimated with the barrow comment, I think the consciousness of people was so different back then. It's hard for us to get any inkling of that, and I don't think people then were just like grubbier, stupider versions of us who kind of like just went around eating, drinking and fighting, because I think there's more to it than that. So I consider this a fantasy game, and as such it's kind of like, you know, cheap B movie, but it's, to me it's no more than that. I wouldn't call it a simulation of any sort of in any sense of the word. Yeah, it's just kind of like a fantasy idea of what I don't think life was like. But I guess it's somebody's. But you know, I'm going against, I think, maybe the design intent. It's not obviously meant to be taken that seriously, but it's kind of coming from a basic flavour of this is what we thought things were like then. Anyway, sort of putting that all to one side, let's go ahead and look at the actual game as it plays. Just taking it as something that is procedures for primitive fighting with bows, hands and so forth. Okay, I've just purchased units for the small village raid, the first scenario, and that was very interesting. The defenders get an unprotected village, a goat unit, 3 dependents and 3 goods, and then they get 6 people points and 3 work points with which to purchase their units. Essentially, a people point gets you 1 person or 1 unit, and dogs cost half, so that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 people points. Now the work points you can use represent people working to produce better weapons, essentially. So these guys are all unarmoured hand bearers and this fellow has a spear, so I purchased all 3 work points to get unarmoured spear carrier there. Now I could have converted 1 people point to 2 work points. I didn't for the defenders, but for the attackers you can't see this very well because of the way the counters are, but they went for 2 dogs as well, so that's they got 6 people points and 4 work points, and I converted 1 people point to work points, so we get 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 people points and 6 work points. So these are all unarmoured axe, which is 1 work point each, and then the last fellow is another spear carrier. So I set these up, and then these come near one edge and these come on the other edge. I've decided for my game to use this photocopy which took the edges to each side of the A4, but I've lost 3 hexes off the top and 3 hexes off the bottom. So this is, I'm not sure exactly of the size of the original. It makes sense if it's A4 because you could fold that down into, maybe it's a bit bigger than A4 and it folds into quarters into there. So maybe this is the right hex size. I found these hexes were going to be a little bit cramped. So I'm going with this, but I'll keep this to one side in case I need to use those top and bottom ends. Okay, now the defender sets up first and they have to put their village hex. They choose a board end, north or south, and then they have to put their village hex. Let me just turn that around. Then they put the village hex more than 11 hexes away. Now the board's 22 hexes, so 11 hexes up from either end is the middle. So essentially you're going to be, and then your units have to start 8 hexes from the within 8 hexes of their board end and 6 hexes away from the village. So essentially, say you choose the south, you'll have to put the village in the north, and your guys will be starting in the south, and the raider will come in from that direction. Bearing that in mind, I've chosen for the defenders the north end and placed the village in some 3 woods hexes here. All the goods, dependents and the goat unit are placed in the village. This is defensible terrain because the woods benefit defender and the rough terrain here benefits the defender. The village couldn't be placed in a river, otherwise I might have chosen these woods. That would have been an option, but this way we get all of the village in protected terrain. So all the dependents will be protected from the start. So the raiders will be coming in this way, and now I'm going to set up the rest of my defenders. 1 dog unit is actually placeable in the village, so I've done that with 1 of them. We have another dog unit, and this is the perimeter, so all the other units have to set up within 8 hexes of the board edge and no closer than 6 hexes of the village. So this is our perimeter. So I have set up 3 unarmed fellows here. They'll be moving here. We have to try and move folks dependents and goods off our board end, and the raiders are trying to move them off their board end. So they will move up there to help protect those off. And then we've got the spear throwing unit unarmoured and the dog unit in this hex here, actually in the river, but the idea is so that they will threaten, like the flank of the raiders are probably going to try and come up through here, which is clearish terrain. They just have to negotiate that river. So that's the setup. Now I'll see about the raiders. And the raiders, ignoring folks up here, come on the board edge down here. It costs 1 movement point plus 1 for each sort of extra terrain in the hex, so that's 3 movement points on a river and a wood. You've got the 2 dogs units there, spent all them 8 movement points. You've got the spear throwing unit with 5 movement points there, and 3 unarmoured axe units there with movement points of 4. Now I hadn't checked or thought when I set up, but these guys are going to be really slow moving through all that defensive terrain. I thought that I had to have to defend them here. I didn't realise I had to run them on the board edge. So anyway, the goat's the most valuable, the dependent's next. So these ones just went up here and these ones went up here. They left the goods behind because it reduces the movement point by 1, carrying goods, and goats and dependents only have movement of 3. So they've moved up there. This one actually carried its goods, so we've got 2 goods and dependents there because they couldn't have moved there anyway, so they thought they might as well carry the goods a little bit of a ways. And then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. These will come down here, and likewise here we'll have, oh, that dog's got 8 movement points, hasn't it? But they cannot carry goods, I presume. Okay, so that dog will actually move there, and this dog over here is moving . 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And these fellows, they're both on 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, so that's the end of turn 1. The game continues until one side has removed all their fellows by elimination or off the board edge, or there's 10 turns without anyone fighting. So we don't have to track the turns as such. Okay, the raiders have moved up. These they all actually have 5 movement points except for the dogs with 8. So the dogs whizzed up here. They've skirted the defender dog here, villager's dog, and they're heading for that dependent there. And we've got the spearman backed up by the unarmoured axeman there, 2 axemen here. Now, on the defender's side, let's zoom in. The dog down here ran up, along with one of the unarmoured fellows ran up here to protect that defendant. We've got 2 more running here to the defensive rough terrain. We've got the other dog, spear thrower and unarmoured there. And now we actually are able to have ranged combat because 3 hexes with a spear thrower, I believe. Oh no, that's a bow, isn't it? It's adjacent with spears. So there's no combat again this turn. Over to the next turn. So the raiders skirt around the villagers here, and their dogs moved up past the goods right round here to try and take out these undefended dependents. And this guy's going fast as well to try and sort of skirt around, so no ranged combat there. The villagers move some dependents and goat unit up there. Another dependent has halted there with an unarmoured fellow and a dog, and then we have dog, 2 unarmoured fellows here, and then the spear fellow and an unarmoured fellow are attacking this axe wielding chap. Hand-to-hand combat at a 2-to-1 odds. So we roll a 1, which is attacker wounded. All attacking units are turned over. These have their attack and defense strengths halved, in addition to terrain effects for the remainder of the game, so they can move normally. If the unit has a defense strength of 1, treat as attacker killed. Oh no, they're okay, but that is disastrous. Okay. And thus endeth, was that the 3rd or the 4th turn? So the raiders move their 2 dogs up here to attack a lone dependent. 2 units there and 2 axe units against these 2 wounded fellows, for which they roll, and it's a 3-to-1 attack. They roll a 4, which is 1, 2, 3, 4, DR, which is defender retreat. All units are retreated 1 hex by the attacking player. Okay, so he retreats those defenders down there. I'll just give you a quick look at the combat results table. So at 1-to-1 odds, we've got attacker wounded, attacker retreat, both wounded, defender retreat, defender wounded. And at 2-to-1, attacker wounded, which was that unlucky result I got there for those villagers. Well, you say unlucky, but it's equal odds as any other one, isn't it? And except defender retreated would have been twice. Attacker retreated, defender wounded, defender killed on a 6. So now we have 2 dogs. They have 2 attack points versus 2 defense points of the dependent. So that's a simple 1-to-1 attack. We roll a 2. That's attacker retreat. So I don't know if they go as stacks or not. I'm not going to worry about that for now because they won't be fighting them. Okay, so the villagers' turn. They move dependents and goats here. That's a swamp, which is doubles their defensive strength. And there's a dependent here. They want to get off. 1, 2, 3. So they will go with them. And then we're worried here. So I think we'll have 1, 2, 3. These will attack those there, along with that wounded fellow. And I'm going to try and get a ranged attack of him first, if that's possible. Okay, that was a basic 2-to-1 attack there. The ranged attack just adds its value into the melee attack, with the result of the defenders retreated. And I had to put a chit there to remind me that that's 1 ranged attack out of 3 possible. Over to the raiders. So I'll try and pick up where I left off with this little game of sticks and stones. It's the raiders player's turn, and movement will be, we had a retreat here, didn't we? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5, okay. They will join them, and then the spear unit, I think, will join the dogs in attacking these. 1, 2, 3, yeah, okay. So these units are all in that hex, and I could have done an adjacent attack. I haven't really used that. Doesn't seem to be that beneficial. sure, at least not with this few units. So we have a 4-5 against a 6-7-8, so that's 1 to 1. We rolled a 5, and that's a defender retreat result. So the attacker retreats the defenders. He's obviously going to retreat them this way, and in that hex 2 dogs. Okay, so now it's over to the villagers. They're just trying to escape. They've left behind all of their goods, which is already a few victory points. Mind you, they could pick them up with the fellows down here, but let's try and get these off the map. So that's 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, and then 1, 2. That's a dependent, so they haven't got enough movement to go in there. They will stay there defending. Now we've got these wounded fellows. Their movement point cost, strangely, isn't reduced. It's just the attack and defense. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. They're moving 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So they're moving rather defensively into this defensive terrain. The dogs there as a bit of bait. So the next turn, the raider player. Okay, so the raiders took the bait. They attacked the dog, just trying to eliminate it on their way up here, but it rolled a lucky 1, retreated. Then the dogs here tried to attack the dependent and the goat unit before they moved off, and they had an attack retreat result. And the spear unit actually moved into the hex of the it didn't attempt an attack, but attempted a capture. Essentially, with a capture, the defendant gets a 1 to 2 sort of defensive counter attack, odds of 1 to 2, and there's a 50% chance of them of no effect. 4 on a roll of 4, both people are wounded, or you could have the defender retreat or defender wounded. So 50% chance of kind of succeeding. They didn't, so that unit is now captured, and they will have to be escorted. But we go over to the villagers. So as the victory points stand, the villagers have 5 points for exiting their goat unit, 1 of the dependents. Another dependent is captured, and then there's 1 here being escorted away. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. That's 3. You can only have 3 units in a hex, so I'll have that one there. There's no point. These goods are only worth 1 victory point each, so there's no point in them picking them up, trying to take them. They're just going to try and exit the board. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So splitting up. So yes, I was going to say it comes down to who's got the goods. No, it's still all in the balance. I was thinking there's 5 victory points off for the villagers, and then the raiders have 2 victory points there and potentially 3 more with the goods. So I thought that was even, but I'd forgotten there's a dependent there which is worth 2 victory points if they get off the board. So on the raiders' turn, this fellow 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, he has to escort them, which is unfortunate because he's the most powerful. So I'm going to swap the escort there, and well, let's say they swap there. These 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 moving there, and the dogs 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Bit of a desperate attack to try and push them back. So no, let's say the dogs go here and here to try and block them off. Okay, so the villagers turn. Over here, 1, 2. And I'll have those 2 dogs on that dog, and then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So we're ending up with sort of big stacks. So no 2 to 1 attack there. Oh no, it's defending wood, so it'll be a 1 to 1 attack. I rolled a 4, which is both wounded. So all 3 dogs are wounded there. Unfortunately, these are single-sided counters, so you haven't got any indication which is green or which is white. Okay, the raiders attack. So we've got an escort here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Oh no, they have to move at the rate of the dependence, so that's only 3. Then homing in for the kill here. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And that dog joining that attack. So that attack is 7 versus 4. That's 3 to 2. 2 is attack or retreat. Oh, bad luck. So, on there go 1, 2, and then 3. They move off. Oh, I forgot the wounded dog there. That would have been 2 to 1. That would have been 8 to 4, wouldn't it? So 2 would have been still attack or retreat. Okay. Let's move those wounded dogs off. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And that's the end of the game. So the villagers just won with an extra dependent, so it was 7 points against 5. And they lost their goods and 1 bunch of the dependents, but they saved 2 bunches of the dependents and their goats. And thus is the game Sticks and Stones. Now that is fun. I enjoyed that. I think I tried to play Chitin the other day and I didn't enjoy it. Although it's a similar sort of very simple game like this, same size map and sort of relatively simple tactics. But I think I prefer games with people in them. I think that's what it boils down to. I couldn't quite feel enthusiastic for Chitin. That's not a criticism of the game at all. But this game, I think, works very well. It's and I'm trying to give these kind of like objective reviews of these games, but I can't say anything more than what you saw in the gameplay there. It's a simple game that it's got some more intriguing sounding scenarios which I haven't played. I can't see any problems with the rules. I found one slight printing error which is easily rectifiable, and that was a rules reference. It's good. It's cheap, it's cheerful. Components aren't up to today's standards, but that's no criticism of the game as it was then, because it was a cheap game. That's what it was meant to be. Easy to get into and fun to play.